Morning, pool guy!
He has no idea.
You own 11 companies across 2 countries, and the security guard in the lobby of your own office building still calls you the pool guy. Not out of disrespect, he genuinely doesn't know any better, because 10 years ago, that's exactly what you were. And you've never bothered to correct him. You let him keep calling you that the same way you let most people keep believing the small version of the story, because the small version is easier to explain, and the real version doesn't fit in an elevator ride. It starts in 2011. You're 22, driving a borrowed Chevy with a pressure washer bungee corded in the bed, cleaning residential pools for $60 a visit. First-year revenue, $94,000, and almost every dollar of it is your own back, your own hours, 6 days a week under a sun that doesn't care how tired you are. Then November hits, and 60% of your route disappears overnight. Pools close for winter. Phone stops ringing. You sit in your apartment doing math that doesn't work, and you learn the first lesson the hard way. A business that only exists in the summer isn't a business. It's a bet you keep making every single year. That winter, a retired contractor named Esteban starts showing up at the same diner you eat lunch at. He'd run a commercial pool service company for 22 years before selling it. He watches you complain about the dead season for 3 weeks before he finally says something. Seasonal cash flow doesn't build wealth, he tells you, stirring coffee he never actually drinks. Recurring contracts do. You ask him what that even means. He doesn't answer right away. He just asks you a question back. How many of your customers pay you the same amount every single month whether you show up or not? The answer is 0, and the silence after that answer teaches you more than the 6 months before it did. So, you pivot. Instead of chasing one-off pool cleanings, you go after HOAs and small commercial plazas with year-round property maintenance contracts. Landscaping, basic upkeep, seasonal transitions, all bundled into a flat monthly fee. It's a harder sell. HOA boards move slowly, and your first 3 pitches go nowhere. But the 4th one lands, then 2 more, and within 14 months, you've replaced 40 seasonal pool customers with 12 annual contracts. Revenue volatility drops from 60% swing to under 9%. For the first time, you can look at a calendar in October without your stomach dropping. Growth solves one problem and immediately creates another. By your 3rd year, you have 6 technicians on the road, and one Tuesday, an HOA board president calls furious because 3 different guys handled 3 visits to the same property in 3 completely different ways. One over-fertilized a bed, one skipped a step entirely, one did it right. I don't care who you send, I care that it's the same every time. That sentence sits with you longer than the complaint does. You spend a weekend writing a single laminated page, the exact steps, the exact order, no exceptions, and hand it to every technician on the crew. Callback complaints drop by more than half within 2 months. You've just learned that a business run on individual judgment isn't a system. It's a rumor that happens to be mostly true. Here's where it gets interesting, because the next move doesn't come from a bank. It comes from one of your own HOA clients, a man named Doss, who happens to run a commercial real estate portfolio on the side. Over coffee, he mentions, almost casually, that most small service companies get bought the wrong way. You don't need a pile of cash to buy a competitor, he says. You need the competitor's own future cash flow to pay for itself. That's the first time you hear the phrase seller-financed roll-up, and it rearranges something in your head. 6 months later, you buy a small irrigation repair company for $210,000, 70% of it financed by the seller himself, paid back out of the very contracts you're acquiring. You don't touch your savings. The business buys itself. Now you're not just a maintenance company. You're an irrigation company too, and the math gets obvious fast. The same trucks, the same properties, the same customers who now get 3 services instead of 1, without a single new sales call. You acquire a landscape lighting company next, smaller, cheaper, and suddenly, 1 visit to 1 property generates 3 invoices instead of 1. Your competitors are still knocking on new doors. You're just adding lines to the same invoice you were already sending. Then you notice something quietly expensive. All 3 companies rent their equipment, pumps, trenchers, aerators, from the same outside rental company. And that rental company's margin is coming straight out of your pocket every single month. So you start your own equipment leasing entity, buy the equipment outright, and lease it internally to your own companies at the same rate you used to pay a stranger. The margin doesn't disappear, it just stops leaving the building. Around the same time, a scheduling app you'd built out of pure frustration because you were sick of juggling 3 companies on paper starts getting requests from other small maintenance owners who want to license it. You say yes almost as an afterthought, and within 18 months, you're running a small software company whose customers include people who have no idea they're funding your growth. An attorney named Farah sits you down around this point and says something that sounds boring until you understand what it's actually protecting. Right now, if one truck causes one accident, every company you own is exposed. She restructures everything. Each business becomes its own separate entity, all of them sitting under a single holding company, each one insured, capitalized, and operated on its own. You don't think much of it at the time. You will think about it very differently 3 years later when a lawsuit from a workplace injury tries to reach past one operating company toward everything you own and fails, because the walls Farah built are real walls, not decoration. Not everyone builds it this way, and you get to watch what the other path looks like up close. A competitor named Rico grows louder and faster than you. New trucks every year, a face on the side of his van, a following on social media that makes him look like the guy who's actually winning. He calls you once, almost casually, asking about roll-ups, the same move you'd made years earlier. You ask him one question. What does his cash flow look like against his existing debt? There's a long pause, and then he changes the subject to his marketing numbers instead. 18 months later, his line of credit gets pulled after an audit flags declining cash flow against personal guarantee debt he can't service, and he sells everything in a fire sale for a fraction of what it was worth on paper. He's looked bigger than you the entire time. He just wasn't standing on anything solid. Somewhere in the middle of all this growth, your sister calls you on a Tuesday night, not asking for money, just asking if you know a good lawyer because hers seems always so calm about this stuff. She's going through a divorce and bleeding money on legal fees she can't really afford. You don't wire her anything that night. Instead, you call Farah the next morning, get her sister a flat fee referral instead of an hourly one, and spend a Saturday afternoon going through her paperwork the exact way Farah once went through yours. You find $4,000 in support she was owed and never asked for. She still thinks you do well with the property thing. She has no idea it's now the smallest of 6 businesses you run, and you never correct that either for the same reason you never correct the security guard. By year 9, the playbook is fully proven at home, and you start wondering out loud whether it only works in one zip code. You find a fast-growing suburb outside Guadalajara, new housing developments going up faster than the number of licensed maintenance crews who can service them. You don't move there. You don't learn the language overnight or try to run it yourself. You hire a local operator, hand her the exact same laminated one-page system Esteban's advice eventually turned into, translated word for word, and fund the first acquisition through the holding company. 18 months later, her operation is outperforming your original one on margin because she's applying a fully debugged system to a market that has never seen one before. The number arrives the way these things usually do, quietly in a spreadsheet from your accountant, while you're standing in a parking lot outside a supply store waiting on a technician who's grabbing a part for a job you're following up on personally, out of nothing but old habit. Combined enterprise value across everything you've built, just north of $38 million. You read it twice. The technician comes out with the part, asks if you want to come take a look yourself. You do. You climb the ladder the same way you did at 22, because some habits never fully leave. That evening, the security guard waves at you on your way out and asks, half joking, if you can take a look at his pool pump sometime since he heard you're still in that business. You tell him, sure, no problem, and you mean it. That Saturday, you show up with an old bag of tools and fix it in 20 minutes for the cost of a $40 part, exactly like you would have a decade ago. He tries to hand you cash, you wave it off. He has no idea that somewhere in a filing cabinet he'll never see, a holding company he's never heard of quietly owns pieces of 11 businesses across 2 countries. And none of it changes the fact that on a random Saturday, you're still the guy kneeling by his pump with a flashlight, because the whole machine only works if nobody has to know it's there.